It was an honour to be a part of the third stringers and get a win against real NBA starters. Hashtag the process.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking back at the games from Tuesday, a whole bunch of absolutely massive ass kickings in that bunch of games, and then preview the 8 games we've got for Wednesday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
All right, let's get to it indeed. We will start where we always do on these shows, of course. That is
Monstrous Line of the Night.
The monstrous line of the night. There weren't many, there were a lot of great performances, but no massive, clear standout guy. In the end, the algorithm I used went with Paul George as the monstrous line of the night. Georgie played 37 minutes in the Thunder's disappointing loss to the Hawks. He had 24 points with 8 rebounds and 3 assists. He had 5 steals. He had 5 triples as well. He was a perfect 7 of 7 from the line. The field goal percentage wasn't great, just 6 of 18 from there. But it's a nice little bit of a strong performance from George, whose numbers, I think I did it yesterday's show or the day before, where he was outside the top 20 over the last 2 weeks. And he is the 6th ranked player over the course of the season. And that's in large part due to the field goal percentage. But good to see the assist back up, hitting a lot of threes, and getting those steals in huge amounts as well. So Paul George is your monstrous line of the night. He is the 6th ranked player for the season. I think he's more going to settle into that 10 to 15 type of an area. At the moment, the numbers are a bit lower because the shots aren't there. So maybe still a little bit of a buy low guy, but after today, perhaps not with those big steals and 3-point numbers from Paul George.
Waiver Wire Line of the Night.
The waiver wire line of the night goes to Alex Len of the Atlanta Hawks. Len came off the bench with the Wizard Amari Spellman starting in place of the Undertaker Dwayne Dedmon, but this time he played 31 minutes. Last game he played under 20. He had 24 and 11 with 3 assists. He had a steal. He had 2 blocks, and he was great from the field. 64% on 14 attempts and a fantastic 5 of 6 from the free throw line. Len's had some pretty decent games so far this season. There is the chance that Dedmon gets traded. I think it's a pretty high possibility that Dedmon gets traded this season, but I don't necessarily think that automatically means 27 minutes of Len. I think they'll want to give Spellman more of those minutes, but he will be inconsistent. So there will be these performances from Len. We know that when he gets 27 a night, he's probably close to a 12-team league guy. I don't know how long Dedmon is going to be out, so I'm not looking at Len as a must-add type of a player. He's more of a 16-team streamer at this stage, whose opportunity could rise later in the season. But again, if I think the Hawks are going to be moving on from Dedmon, it's going to be to embrace youth, and it's going to be to use guys like Spellman, although Len is on a 2-year deal, so he is around for $4 million or so next season as well, so he's around there, so maybe they look to him to be that sort of developmental anchor, I guess, helping guys like Young and Bembry and Herter and Collins and all those guys in that starting lineup, the artists formerly known as Torrey and Prince as well. Some strong numbers here from Len. Pretty nice stuff, but hard to look at him as a must roster guy. The deep leaguer of the night goes to Baby Neck Wilson Chandler of the Philadelphia 76ers. Chandler, he hasn't been fantastic this season, I think that's fair to say, and that's why he's rostered in 3% of Yahoo leagues. But tonight was good, 14, 5, and 4 with 4 triples and a block on 5 of 7 shooting for Wilson Chandler. He is outside the top 200 this season, although over the last month, the numbers have come back, and he's just barely outside the top 150, all doing that while shooting under 40%. He is not going to be a 12-team league guy, but he could force his way into 14-team discussion, or maybe even maybe force his way into 16-team discussion, or maybe even into 14-team discussion. The reason that he has pushed up in the last month to be just outside the top 50 is the fact that he has not missed a single free throw in that time. In fact, that's really the only positive fantasy category he's had during that stretch. That's why I don't read a huge amount into that, and that's why I look at him more as a 16-team league guy rather than a 14-team league player.
Young Gun of the Night.
The young gun of the night is Chandler's teammate, and that is Ben Simmons, who only played 26 minutes in the destruction of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Almost triple-doubled, had 20 and 11 with 9 assists, 1 steal and 3 blocks. It was 7 of 10 from the field, and probably the most impressive thing was he was 6 of 7 from the free throw line. Simmons, whose numbers had been down of late, were able to push them back up here, and over the last 2 weeks he's back inside the top 25. The free throws are still a concern, but getting a steal and a block per game with almost averaging a triple-double over his last 7, 20.5, 10.5, and 9.5, while shooting 62% is really strong. He's much, much better for head-to-head leagues versus rotisserie, where you have to try and deal with that massive negative in free throw percentage. But those other numbers, those counting stat numbers, your points league type numbers, Simmons is a much different guy and a significantly better player in those formats, the head-to-head and points leagues versus rotisserie. But he is on a strong little stretch at the moment, Simo. Top 15 over the last week, and his last 3 games have been 20, 10, and 15. 20, 22 and 9, and 20, 11 and 9. So he could have had 3 consecutive 20-point triple-doubles, just missed out by 1 assist in each of the last 2 games. So big games again from Benny Simmons. I tell a man's not hot. The dud of the night goes to Joshie Richardson of the Miami Heat. 25 minutes for Richardson in their blowout loss against the Bucks. Just the 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. Shot poorly, 3 of 11 from the field. Didn't get to the line at all and had no defensive numbers. His recent numbers are very, very disappointing. In fact, over the last month, he's outside the top 75, and over the last 2 weeks, he's outside the top 120 because the shooting hasn't been great, but he's also getting no defensive numbers at all. In fact, over the last 2 weeks, which is 7 games, he's had 3 steals and 2 blocks, and he has had just 5 blocks over his last 14 games. This is a guy that's basically been a blocker game per guy over the last couple of seasons. With the extra attention that he has to focus in on offense, a lot of his defensive numbers have fallen away, and that's caused a bit of a drop in his value, not to mention the poor field goal percentage. He's still shooting 37% on his threes, but his twos are down at 43%, down from 50% last season. So it's a big, big drop off on his 2-point percentage as his usage has gone up from 18 to 22.5%. The numbers are still fine. He's still a must roster guy pretty clearly. And there might even be a little bit of a buy low scenario here, but it's all going to come down to, will the defensive numbers come back? I'm a little worried about that. But more importantly, will that field goal percentage come back? And that feels like it might be stuck at this level, although we have seen form of him being able to do that in previous seasons, just not as this number one guy. Maybe if Goran Dragic returns, not necessarily when he returns, will that ease some of the load on Richardson? I'm not sure it will, because Dragic was there to begin this season, and Richardson was still shooting poorly back then. Let's look at the GOATs of the night. The best net rating went to Tone Snell of the Milwaukee Bucks, a plus 116.5, while the worst net rating was in that same game, and it was Jimmy Johnson of the Miami Heat, who was a negative 114.4. He was trending up, getting 27, 28 minutes a night. He missed 1 game because he was ill, and everything's gone to shit. His minutes are down, his production is nowhere to be seen. I don't know what's going on with him. Maybe it will come back, but there's no point in holding him, I don't think, in 12-team leagues, waiting for that to come back. Some injury news. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson has been upgraded to probable, so he'll be likely to return to Wednesday's game. So I found him on my waiver wire in a couple of my leagues, 14-team leagues as well. So go and have a look. He might be there, and you can take a flyer to see how that works. Aaron Baines also upgraded to questionable for the Celtics. In Utah, some news coming out on their point guard scenario. Both Hull Neto and ravishing Rick Rubio are going to be reevaluated again in another week. Tabo Cephalosha with his hamstring also reevaluated in another week. Doesn't mean they're out for a week. It means they're out at least a week. And Dante Exum reevaluated in another 2 weeks. So he is out for at least 2 weeks. So that means Royce O'Neal gets that bump for 14 and 16 team leagues. A real stretch run for Don Mitchell. Bump for assists for Jingle and Joe Ingles there as well. And Kyle Korver probably gets a bump in his playing time also. While Tyus Jones suffered a high ankle sprain today, x-rays were negative. All that means is he didn't break a bone, doesn't tell us anything about the ligaments. I would guess a couple of weeks here for Tyus at minimum. We'll hope it's nothing more serious than that. He was just pushing into the 12-team value, but with Jeff Teague and Derrick Rose around, it doesn't actually change too much. They'll still play their value. Maybe Jared Bayless comes in and plays 10 minutes a night. Maybe it helps Josh Okogie stabilize at around 30 minutes, but there's no 12-team play here with Jones likely to miss time. I wouldn't expect anyway. Let's go on to these games now, talk about them. Then there's going to be little to talk about just because these games were such gigantic ass kickings. The first one we look at was the Phoenix Suns and the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers win 131-97. Devin Booker was back. He was dreadful. 27 minutes for Book, 8, 5, and 5. Didn't shoot the ball well, and you got to think that back is still bothering him. But the interesting thing here, with Booker out, we saw McCall Bridges' minutes drop, and Josh Jackson and Kelly Oubre's minutes rise. With Booker back, Oubre and Jackson took a back seat, and Bridges' minutes went back up. And he played 30 minutes here. Bridges, 7 points with 7 rebounds and 2 steals. Hit all of his shots. He's looking like a really poor man's Otto Porter at this point that just doesn't get enough shots, can be efficient, get some steals, and really he is just a steal streamer at this point, but that can have value. DeAnthony Melton, 22 minutes only, which is unfortunate and disappointing. 3 points on 1 of 7, that's a disaster, but 4 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. Out of the Jackson, Oubre, Bridges, Melton quartet, Melton's the guy that I want in 12-team leagues. Let's check on those other two guys. Oubre played 24 minutes, had 16 and 5 with a 1-1. Was a disastrous 1 of 6 from the line. His field goal percentage has been way up this season, but those free throws really did affect his value here. I look at him more as a 14-teamer. Well, Joshy Jackson only played 19 minutes and had 8, 4, and 3, and he goes back to 14 to 16-teamers. Richaun Holmes struggled early but came on late. 13 points in 19 minutes with a block. 5 rebounds, continuing to be close to a 12-team league guy. I don't think he's a must-roster guy because it's hard to be must-roster in 19 minutes, but he is a per-minute beast, and we're well aware of that, while TJ Warren had 18 and 3 in his time on the court. For the Pacers, they had Darren Collison, Corey Joseph, and Miles Turner all questionable. They all played. Daza had 15, 4, and 7 with 3 steals. Turner was back after missing 4 games and had 18 and 6 with 2 steals and 2 blocks, so good to have him back. Well, Tyreek Evans turned in probably his best performance of the season. 20 points, only 15 minutes, and that 15 minutes is the most important stat to me there rather than the 20 points, meaning he's not going to be able to maintain or achieve this number all that often. With Turner back, Domantas Sabonis went back to the bench. He played only 20 minutes because of foul trouble, still 14 and 8, while Oladipo, his disastrous season, and I say disastrous in referencing his ADP, continues. 8 points on 11 shots with 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals. Do not count on him being a top 20 player for the rest of this season. I'm not. The next game we take a look at here, we've got another blowout. Literally every game was a blowout apart from the last one. The Minnesota Timberwolves got spanked by the Sixers, 149-107. The Sixers had 115 points after the first 3 quarters. I'm not going to get into talk about weakness and no lead dog mentality for the Wolves, but they were absolutely piss poor and pathetic, and they got their asses kicked. All of them, Towns, Teague, Wiggins, they were disgustingly bad in this game. Towns, 13 and 3 in 28 minutes, putrid. Derrick Rose, 15, 2 and 4 in 22 minutes. Not much better. Jeff Teague, 11 points, 2 assists, 2 steals.
My name is Jeff.
Piss poor. Wiggins, 12 and 4 in 27 minutes, 2 steals and a block. Blech. At least he had the 2 steals and a block. It came down to Luol Deng having to play 15 minutes for this team. He scored 11 points. But man, they were a disaster. Nothing on the Dario Saric is coming into 12-team league value front. He's not. Don't worry about him. He can be gone in all 12s and probably all 14-team leagues. And then we had Taj Gibson chuck in 10 and 5, and Gorgie Jeng played 20 minutes because of the absolute ass-kicking nature of this game. On to the Sixers. Embiid had 31 and 13 in just 27 minutes. He is an absolute monster. While General Soreness had 19, 3 and 4 with 2 steals and 3 triples on 8 of 10 shooting. Butler was fantastic. My man Jonah Bolden, really good stuff, and he is a regular rotation player now, played at backup center, looked really strong here, 14 points, 4 triples and 2 blocks, and this is what he can do. He's not a 12-team league guy, but think of him the way that you might think of Richaun Holmes, a very poor man's Richaun Holmes, who at some point will be better than Richaun Holmes, but that's the sort of impact he can have. A good per-minute guy, limited minutes of playing time, but someone to really, really watch as seasons go past, and a deep league ad for now. Timothy John McConnell had 8 points with 8 assists and a steal, just doing exactly what he needs to do to maintain that value for certain teams, but not for everybody. Well, JJ Redick had 15 points in his 26 minutes. Let's go to the next one, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Atlanta Hawks. I thought this game was going to be a blowout. I didn't think it would be the Hawks doing the blowout. They win by 16, 142-126. Westbrook had 31, 6 and 11 with 5 steals. and actually wasn't a negative from the free throw line, so that's a positive. 11 of 14 there. Jeremy Grant continues to be impressive, 21-5 with 3 steals and 2 blocks, and he's cementing himself as a must-roster player, while Schroeder had 21, 3 and 6 in his #revenge game. Poor shooting as per usual, but nice usage, good scoring, really just keeping himself hanging around the back end of 12s. I don't think he's a must-roster guy. Adams had 16 and 7, made all of his shots, and missed 3 of his 5 free throw attempts, as is pretty much the pattern for Steve Adams, and then not much else happening for the Thunder. For the Hawks, Bembry was great, 16, 8 and 6 with 2 steals. I worry about the return of Bazemore and an increase in Prince's minutes, what that's going to do for Bembry, but he has been really, really good. I remember back in the draft that I said I liked Bembry more than Prince, and that's never played out that way. But at the moment, Bembry looks absolutely fantastic, and he has got that great all-round fantasy game. Trae Young was great as well, 24, 6 and 11, while the Baptist John Collins had 26 and 5, and Kevin Huerter hit 5 triples, had 17 points with 4 assists. He's a must-roster player. Collins and Young, clearly a must-roster players. Bembry is pretty close to it, and he's available in 87% of leagues. He's a short-term guy for sure, but that could actually change. He could stick in that role, while the artist formerly known as Torian Prince, 7 points in 13 minutes. It's going to take a while for him to get back in business. The Wizard, Omari Spellman, wasn't as good as last time, but 10, 3 and 3 in 22 minutes. Again, a name to watch as the trade deadline approaches. I think he could be a regular 25-minute-a-night sort of a player. Let's go on to the next game. You'll be stunned to know it was another blowout. The Miami Heat got smacked by the Bucks, 124-86. Winslow was strong, 19, 5 and 5 with 2 blocks. Whiteside also pretty good, 19 and 8. And with Whiteside playing that well, that meant that Adebayo only played the 23 minutes and had 2 of 5. It's pretty hard to hold him in 12-teamers. He was 0 of 6 from the field. Tyler Johnson played 25 minutes and had 7 points, while Derek Jones Jr. only 18 minutes and had 7 points with 3 assists. Really hard to get a full grasp on what he does because the minutes are so all over the place. Dion Waiters had only 12 minutes and then complained about his playing time. Look, this bloke, seriously, he is the shittest of shit. I mean, he's not the shittest of shit blokes because Derrick Rose still exists, but he is a shit bloke. He's been back, about 5 games after missing 2 years after ankle surgery. And wants to demand minutes when A, he's not that good, and B, calm down. And then after the game, kids, close your ears, but his quote was, "Fuck patience, I've waited long enough." Cool. So everyone just bow to King Dion then. Man, this guy is a real dickhead. 2 points for him in 12 minutes. Tyler Johnson, 7 points in 25. You can drop him in 12s. And as I said, Jim Johnson, scoreless, but had 6 rebounds and 2 blocks, but just it's not enough. For the Bucks, Eric Bledsoe, I hope you bought low because he's really cranking at the moment. 17, 5 and 4, 2 steals and a block in only 22 minutes. Lopez had 3 steals and 3 blocks in his. No, he didn't. He had 3 threes and 3 blocks in his 25 minutes. Well, Yanni had the old Ray Felton triple-double, 12, 10 and 10, but only played 25 minutes, had 3 steals, and of course destroyed your free throws in the process. Brogdon continues to be an unbelievable shooter, but missed a free throw, which I think is his 5th missed free throw for the entire season and the 2nd over the last 2 months. Continues to be a strong option, but I do think his value is going to decline at some point. While Middleton was okay without being great, but this game was a disaster. It was over after about halfway through the 3rd quarter, I would say. Maybe then. It was not good from Miami's perspective. The next game, stunner, also a blowout. The Warriors 142 beat the Nuggets 111. Clay had 31, Steph had 31, Durant had 27, and they hit 5, 8, and 5 triples respectively. Big games from all of those guys. Draymond only scored 4 points because he doesn't need to do anymore, but he had 13 assists with 6 rebounds. He's never going to quite be that guy he was in previous seasons, but the numbers are okay. Well, Kevon Looney used probably his second last start of the season, or at least until DeMarcus has to rest, by putting up a good game, 9, 12, and 4 in 24 minutes, but his value is about to take a significant hit. For the Nuggets, the Blue Arrow was okay, 21 points with 4 assists, and Malik Beasley filled in admirably for Gaz Harris with 22 points and 6 triples. Nothing else but 22 points and 6 triples. He is not going to be able to maintain this level of playing time or production. And the other news to note here is Fart and Will Barton ramped up the minutes, 23 of them in fact, a ton of usage, which he's going to have to keep under control. 11, 8, and 4 on 3 of 11 shooting. So it's good to have those counting stats, but I do worry that his propensity to take shit shots is going to be an impact problem. Only 21 minutes for Paul Millsap. I worry about what's going to happen with him. I talked about him on the Buy Low segment released earlier today. and thought he'd get better than he was. And now I'm starting to worry that maybe he's just going to be a 25-minute-a-night guy as Mason Plumlee and Jokic share the court more, as we get Trey Lyles and Juancho Hernangomez playing at the 4. And Millsap, maybe just age is catching up to him, because it was another poor performance from him. While Monty Morris played only 14 minutes, he is looks like going to be the big loser when Gaz Harris returns. The last game of the night was the closest one, and that was probably the worst game of the lot to watch, to be honest. The Lakers beat the Bulls 107-100. Jabari Parker was back in the rotation. I don't know if it's permanent. You have to think that the fact that he replaced Robin Lopez is in large part because of the Lopez trade /buyout / him getting physical in practice situation. Parker had 18 points in 17 minutes, was 7 of 10 from the field, but I still don't see a large enough role for him here to be adding him in 12 or probably even 14 team leagues. Markkanen had 17 points, started poorly. He's just sort of doing what he does, and a lot of people are expecting a huge leap forward for Markkanen. He hasn't done that so far, but a guy to watch is Chandler Hutchison. 27 minutes, 12-5 with 2 steals. He's a long way from being a 12-team league guy, but that's 2 strong performances in a row from Hutch, and it is something just to watch for the Deepers. He's available in 99% of leagues, so I'd go add him in 20s and 18s and probably 16-teamers. Levine had 10, 4, and 8 and was pretty atrocious with the defense and the shooting numbers. While Punch Bob Shiplock, I'm glad that the Bulls said at the start of the game that he's going to be limited, have a minutes restriction of 28 because he played 17 minutes. I don't know why they would say 28 because he's never going to play that much because he is not good. He was 1 of 11 from the field for 2 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists, and he should not be on 12-team league rosters. For the Lakers, Lonzo Ball, 19, 8, and 6 with 2 steals in 38 minutes. I think he's still a really significant sell high. You can tell how good he looks, though, when LeBron and Rondo aren't there, but they're going to come back at some point. Same with Ingram, who was strong here too, 16, 9, and 7. And KCP moved into the starting lineup, played 31 minutes and had 17 and 4 with 2 steals. Of course, his ass moves straight back out of the starting lineup as soon as LeBron returns, but for now, he can be a points and threes and steals type streamer. That meant that the hitman Josh Hart went to the bench. He played just 22 minutes. I think he had 6 minutes in the first half. 2 points with 2 steals, so he is a clear drop in 12s and 14-team leagues, while Tyson Chandler started over JaVale McGee. This doesn't mean Chandler's an ad. It doesn't mean McGee's a drop. McGee still had 9 points with 3 blocks, and Walton didn't commit to this changing starting lineup for any more than this one game. They did win. It was far from convincing, so I don't know whether they'll stick with that. I also don't think Chandler can stick and play 26 minutes a night as we move forward, and McGee works so much better when LeBron's there, and I think that'll move on with him. So if anyone drops him, I would seriously consider adding JaVale after this lineup move. The future MVP, Kyle Kuzma, had 16 and 12, a strong game from him in those 31 minutes that he did play. That will wrap it up for looking at the action from Tuesday. Let us move on now, talk some DFS, and we'll do that by starting with the perfect lineup, and the first one of those we'll look at is on DraftKings. Simmons, Klay Thompson, DeAndre Bembry, Jabari Parker, Alex Len, Russell Westbrook, Kevon Looney, and Trae Young for a total of $361.5, and that cost the full $50,000. And on FanDuel, it was Westbrook, Trae Young, Schroeder, Klay Thompson, Paul George, Bembry, Jonah Bolden, Jeremy Grant, and Alex Len for a total of $389.8, and that cost the full $60,000 dues. Alright guys, let's look at DFS now for Wednesday's games. We've got 8 games across the NBA. We're going to be focusing mainly on DraftKings pricing for today. The first game we look at is the Orlando Magic taking on the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are 3.5-point favorites, and the total here is 206 points. This is a great opportunity for Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond against a front court in Orlando that does give up a decent amount of points, so a good opportunity for those guys to put up some big numbers, especially Drummond in this scenario. Mo Bamba is unlikely to play. He's listed as doubtful, while Zaza Pachulia has been upgraded to questionable after missing the last few games, and it'll be a debate as to whether he or the tackle box John Lua get those minutes at backup center. For the point guards, Ish Smith is at 3,300, so just barely above minimum salary. In his first game back, he played 19 minutes and had 17 points. That's not far away from value at that sort of a salary already. And if he gets any extra minutes in this one, which I think he might push over 20, 21, 22, he could very easily get you 22 or 23 points, and that would be a pretty solid return. Reggie Jackson at 48, I don't see massive value there, especially with Smith returning, while DJ Augustin at 4,500 has been a little bit disappointing, under 20-point average over the last 5. There are better ways of using that sort of a salary. I don't think the Shark, Bruce Brown, or Langston Galloway are really in discussions here, with Brown losing a lot of minutes last game to Smith. At shooting guard, Evan Fournier's at 5,100, really struggling at the moment, but last game was better, 37 minutes for 28 points, and the last 3 times against Detroit, he has averaged 34 points. So I think he is worth looking at here. I think not many people will be getting on the Fournier train, and I think at that sort of a salary, there is some value there. Reggie Bullock's at 45. I don't see huge upside in Bullock personally because of his limited abilities in other categories, whereas someone like Terry Ross at 4,800 is a much higher upside guy who can go off and can contribute in multiple categories. On the wing, you got Johnny Isaac. I'm not really interested there. He's at 3,900. He did put up 22 points last game. He dished out some assists, and he's always got that upside because of the defensive numbers, but I'm not looking at him as a rosterable guy, really, and Stan Johnson's very, very far from rosterable. The big men's where it's at here. Nick Vucevic is at 8,900. He's giving us 46 a game over the last 5. The matchup for him is a decently positive one here against the Pistons. I think he is worth looking at, as is Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond at 92 and 8,700 respectively. Griffin, a little bit quiet in the last game, but prior to that, he put up that monster against the Clippers, 70 points. And I love Drummond here at 8,700 in what is a quite positive matchup. Kem Birch, who gets the backup minutes with Mo Bamba likely out. Not really much to see there, but Aaron Gordon on a really strong run at the moment, Gordo, averaging 42 points in his last 3 after struggling his way through most of this season. I don't mind that because it is a positive matchup for Gordon here against the Pistons. On FanDuel, I like Vooch quite a bit at 92. In Fournier, Reggie Jackson, Reggie Bullock, they're more GPP type of guys. Ish Smith at 41 has a level of appeal, but I think Blake Griffin's probably a bit too high at 9,700. Drummond at 95 comes in, I think, relatively fairly priced. Next game, we take a look at the Milwaukee Bucks, who are on a back-to-back after their annihilation of the Miami Heat. They're taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. No spread or total currently released for this game, so we need to wait to check on that. I guess that's because Marc Gasol's status is up in the air after having that numb hand in Memphis' loss to the Rockets on Monday, so we'll need to check on his status, and that will influence quite a lot of things. If he is out, JaMychal Green gets a larger role because I imagine Jaren Jackson starts at center and Green starts at power forward. Maybe Noah gets some more minutes, but he's not really an option. Ivan Rabb also not really an option. At point guard, Mike Conley's at 7,600. I'm not sure there's a huge upside in that for Conley, but I think that's a fair price for cash value for him. While Eric Bledsoe at 6,300. He dropped 36 points in just 22 minutes in today's game against Miami. Now, the Memphis defense is a little bit of a different story versus Miami. The slower pace can be somewhat of a factor as well. But at his salary is 6,300. He is worth looking at, while Malcolm Brogdon at 59. I think that's too high. And Javon Carter, 3,300. He started last game for Kyle Anderson. He didn't do much, but he can be a 24, 25 point player. I'm just not sure there's enough upside in that to consider him a great option. Shelvin Mack, not bad to look at here. 26 points last game. He played 23 minutes, an elevated role with Anderson out, and at 3,800, I don't mind that. That could be like a little bit of a buffer filler type of a player. Garrett Temple could also fit into that role. 3,700. He's going to start at small forward most likely. He had 23 points against the Rockets in 34 minutes, at 34 minutes being probably the most important stat there. Well, 6,900 for Chris Middleton.
Giggity!
Is obviously a nice price. He hasn't really been at the right level for that number, but I do think that he is okay, but there are better guys out there. Justin Holiday, Sterling Brown, Tone Snell, I don't really see the appeal in any of those guys. Holiday dropped 1.75 points last game against Houston. The other wing-type guys, Giannis Antetokounmpo at 11,000, that's solid. He should be a 50-point guy. He had 49 points in 25 minutes today. That's obviously ridiculous. And then you go to the big men like Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. at 5,600. The value is probably there without Gasol, and with Gasol playing. If Gasol is out, I think it bumps a little bit more because Bickerstaff won't have to be as cautious with him in terms of his playing time, and that could really push him to 35, 40-point upside here. Jaren Jackson Jr. Gasol's at 7,100. I think he's a chance to be valuable at that salary. The hand does worry me, while Brook Lopez at 4,700 hasn't really been at that level of late, which I guess is something of a surprise given the nature of his play this season. He's probably more of a tournament guy at this stage. Ilyasova, Noah, DJ Wilson. I don't really think we need to care too much about those guys. On FanDuel, Carter and JaMychal at 36 and 47 have some GPP upside, especially Green. I think he would translate to a cash play if Gasol is out, while Antetokounmpo is at 11,500. I do really like that play over on FanDuel. All right, let's go on to the next game. we're looking at the Brooklyn Nets and the Houston Rockets. The Rockets are favored by 4. The total is 221.5. We're looking for more Jim Harden greatness here in this one. An interesting situation developing in Houston. Eric Gordon is questionable. But more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but interestingly, Daniel House, they could not come to a contract agreement. He's 45 days on his two-way contract are up, so he won't play. And I don't know if he'll play again for the Rockets this season. They are looking to sign a 10-day contract for a wing player to come in and maybe fill his spot in the rotation. But if Gordon comes back, maybe Gordon just takes all of House's minutes. For Brooklyn, Shabazz Napier missed last game. He's questionable here, while Rondé Hollis-Jefferson is probable to return from his injury that has cost him the last week or so. The point guards here, Harden's at $13,000. That is obviously an expensive price for Jimmy, but with what he's doing at the moment, there's no reason that you should be really avoiding him. He has been that good. Well, D'Angelo Russell also has been that good. Not that good, but he's been good. 7,300 for Russell. I'm happy to use him here. Dinwiddie at 54 is probably more risky and one I'd fade away. While 5,400 for Austin Rivers. I think that can be a cash guy. Not sure his upside is really all that high, but especially if Gordon is out as well as House, then I do think that that is a really strong option there for Austin Rivers. Shooting guards, you got Smoke and Joe Harris at 46. It just doesn't really do it for me. Jim Ennis, Gerald Green, well, one of those guys or two of those guys are going to see a bump if Gordon and House are out. So the 43 for Gerald Green is an interesting tournament play. He dropped 30 points last time out against Memphis, while Eric Gordon at 6,000. Hard to trust what he's going to do coming back from the knee injury, but that salary is appealing enough that you put him into your tournament pool at least. The Comet Gary Clark could also get some minutes with Capella out. 3,400 for Clarko. I'm not really sure it's going to do too much. Same with PJ Tucker at 4,700 and Damari Carroll at 5,000. His ability to get value here with Rondé likely returning is probably a little bit stilted. Same with Rowdy Rodions Kurucs at 4,100, who dropped 30 last game as the Nets really smashed the Celtics. But Hollis Jefferson's return could have somewhat of an impact there. Trevion Graham has been starting. I'm not sure if he'll continue to start, but he's not an option regardless. At centre, Ed Davis, not really interested in him. Jared Allen, I am though. 5,600. He's averaging over 31 in the last 5 games. I'd be more than happy to use him in this game. The minutes have been a little bit up and down, but that's a pretty strong price for Jarrett. While Nene is at 34, likely the starting centre and likely not to play all that much. Same with Isaiah Hartenstein and Marquise Chris. Onto the FanDuel situation here. Harden's at 14,000. We haven't seen that price since the massive days of Russell Westbrook. I think when Kevin Durant first got injured down that stretch of that season. They are big numbers because he is averaging 77 points in the last 3 games, which at 14,000 he actually can get value. It's pretty hard to fade him. Now, fitting a lineup around him might be tough, but at 14,000, I still think that you can be have a useful team with Harden. I think D'Angelo at 79 might be a little bit too high, but I do like Austin Rivers here at 5,000 on FanDuel. Next game up, we look at the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics. No total or spread just yet. Kyrie should be back. Aaron Baines has been listed as questionable, as has Marcus Smart, while Fred VanVleet and CJ Miles are both questionable for the Toronto Raptors after missing last game as well. Let's look at this one point guard wise. Kyrie's at 8,600. The Raptors are pretty good defending point guards, but Kyrie's had some good success there. I think he'll come out with a 40-plus point game here, while Marcus Smart at 46 probably end up fading him regardless of his injury status, and Kyle Lowry at 72. I think we could see some big minutes here for Lowry, which pushes him towards 40 points. I think he's a reasonable option without being a must-roster guy. If Van Vliet misses, you're going to get more minutes from Delon Wright. He's at 4,300, and he dropped 34 points in 22 minutes last game. Of course, repeating that would be fantastic, but it's probably going to require Van Vliet to be absent. For the shooting guards, Jaylen Brown had 37 last game. He's at 4,600. I'm not sure that he can get to that level with Irving back, and then the potential that Smart is back as well. While Dan Green's at 46. He's been consistent recently. That's not normally a trait that he's known for. Probably more still just a tournament guy. On the wings, Gordo Hayward, really, really hard to use him. He's averaging 13 points in his last 3, while Kawhi, the fun guy, at 9,600.
I'm a fun guy.
Look, he's giving you 59 over the last 3. He's obviously a strong player with a real strong option here. And Jason Tatum at 66 took advantage of Kyrie Irving's absence last game, dropped 54, but otherwise I think that 6,600 salary is probably just a little bit too high for Tatum. Terry Rozier started last game. He won't start this game because Kyrie is back, and that $1,200 salary bump means that absolutely nobody should be rostering him. At centre, Al Horford is at 5,900, a decent salary dip. Now, he's done well against the Raptors in the past, but his recent form is not one that I'd want to bank on, while Ibaka at 6,000 also has done well against Boston in recent times. But again, his recent form hasn't been awesome. If I'm going to use one of those guys, it's probably going to be Ibaka at his $6,000 salary. Siakam's at 6,700 on a real hot streak at the moment. Dropped 60 last game against Washington, averaging 40 over the last 3. I think he's okay at that salary, but I'm not looking at him as the best option. And if Baines comes back, I don't think that he's really worth utilising in most scenarios. Let's go on to FanDuel here. No one's massively standing out as a great value. Kyrie at 89's got something there. Ibaka at 64, maybe. Lowry at 72, I think could be of some interest without being the greatest option on the board. Let's go on to the next game now. We've got the San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks are 1-point favourites and the total is 218.5. Dennis Smith no longer has a back injury. Now he is ill. He has a sore tummy. So we'll see if he plays or if the trade machine is still kicking on with him. Apparently, he's not in a situation where he's sitting out or the team's sitting out, but I still call a little bit of bullshit on that as he's missed these last few games. Marco Bellinelli is questionable for San Antonio, while as expected, Rudy Gay is probable with that wrist injury that's cost him a lot of time of late. Smith is down to 4,500 in salary, and he has done well against San Antonio in the past. It's really hard to trust and rely upon him, but maybe as a weird 2% rostered guy, you could throw him into a GPP. Derek White is crushing it. He's at 5,800. Almost impossible to fade him, given how he is playing, giving you 30 a night consistently. Patty Mills at 37. I don't really see it there for him nor for Bryn Forbes. The burner, Jalen Brunson, is up to 4,400. That takes away a lot of the appeal for me. Luka Doncic is at 8,400. Well, he is just a 45-point machine at the moment, so he is really strong here. While DeRozan is at 8,100. Hasn't really been at that 8,100 level all that recently, so I'm not really sure that he is the best play at that salary. Wes Matthews, Marco Bellinelli, they're pretty strong fades. The pencil, Harrison Barnes, is at 5,700. I think there's strong cash value, solid floor, limited upside there for Barnesy. While Rudy Gay coming back, I'd probably fade him in his first game back. Bertans and Finney-Smith, not worth it. At centre, DeAndre Jordan's at 6,800. I think he can be a 35-point guy here, and that puts him in play at that sort of a salary. I don't know what the Spurs will do. Will they start Pau Gasol and whatever nonsense that has been? I don't think we should care too much about that. Aldridge at 83 is on a real tear at the moment, averaging 45 over his last 5 games. It is a decently negative matchup for Aldridge, but I still think that he's in play. While Maxi Kleber is up to 4,600, and that salary bump, it takes away a lot of the appeal that Kleber would have had here, and I don't think by any stretch he is a must-roster player. On FanDuel, I like Doncic, I like Kleber at 46 over there, because that 46 is made differently to the DraftKings 46. Derek White at 61 also comes in as a relatively strong option. Next up, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Portland Trailblazers. The Blazers are 12.5-point favourites. The total is 217.5. Nurkic has got a great opportunity here, assuming that he can stay out of foul trouble, which has really bothered him in the last couple of games. Other injuries to pay attention to, there's not really anything, which is always great news. Actually, that's not true, because Mo Harkless is questionable again with that knee issue. If he is out, Evan Turner and Jake Layman, as well as Source Castillo, Nick Stauskas, they all get a boost. At point guard, the Padawan Colin Sexton's at 4,400. Now, he is not that good of a player, but at that salary, he's giving you 26 a night. I'm okay with it. I think there's value in that. Dame Lillard at 9,000. I also think he's in a really, really strong spot here. CJ McCollum's at 6,600. He's been putrid, but he has really killed the Cavs in the past. 39 average the last 3 times. I think it's worth getting onto the McCollum train here, just hoping that a turnaround is coming, and I think it will. Alec Burks is at 5,200. He is putting up some real monster numbers. Very, very hard to fade him in cash. And Jordan Clarkson at 55. I think I'd probably steer clear of Clarko at this point. Rocket Rodney Hood still dealing with some sort of minutes restriction, but had 28 in 24 minutes last game, and at 4,200, that pays the bills. I don't really think that he is a huge cash guy. He's maybe a tournament sort of a player. The Chief, Al-Farouq Aminu.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
He's at 5,300. He's getting those numbers consistently. I'm happy to use him, and that's not something I say all that lightly with the Chief. And Chetty Osman's at 4,800. I still think, there are better options out there than him. For the big men, let's go with Nurkic at 7,900. A $700 price drop is music to our ears. I think we should be looking pretty heavily at him. While Tristan Thompson played a shit ton last game. 37 minutes, had 39 points, and at 6,200, that sort of return is good. Centers have put up big numbers against Portland, and he is the next one in line. So I think Thompson actually has a little bit of value here with Larry Nance and Kevin Love sidelined. On FanDuel, I like Lillard and Nurkic. I like Aminu. I also like CJ McCollum here and Tristan Thompson with the Padawan Collins Sexton. Not a bad play at 4,900. Let's go on to the next one. We're looking at the New Orleans Pelicans and the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors coming off an absolute smackdown of the Denver Nuggets. The Warriors are 6-point favorites, and the total is a massive 240 points. So there's some real stackability in this game. Steph Curry is at 10,100. Didn't have to exert himself against Denver. I like him quite a bit here. While Drew Holiday at 8,200. I actually like Drew at that salary as well. I think they're going to have to lean quite a bit on Holiday here. Lord Alfred Payton at 5,700. Sorry, I misspoke. I think more of a cash floor sort of a guy rather than an upside player. Clay's at 6,500. I'm not fully invested in that. Etuan Moore, I'm definitely not invested in that. Iguodala, very similarly. I like Durant a lot at 9,800. I'm just not sure how they're going to be able to slow him down here at all. While Darius Miller is 3,500. He had 4 blocks last game and still only put up 20 DraftKings points. So I think we can leave him alone. For the big men, Mirotic at 5,500. He has done extraordinarily well against Golden State in the past, averaging 48 points the last 3 times. It's a little bit hard trying to deal with his comeback from that injury and how much he's actually going to play, but he is an interesting GPP guy nonetheless. Draymond, I'd probably fade. Tone Davis at 11.8 is impossible to fade. I think that's a great option. And Julius Randle at 7,500. I actually think that is relatively safe for cash. No DeMarcus Cousins yet for the Warriors. On FanDuel, Durant and Curry, I really, really like them. I think Mirotic at 58 in a similar boat. And Randall at 78 also looks relatively strong. Tone Davis is at 13,700. That is a lot. I'd probably rather take Harden if I'm going to spend extraordinary amounts of money, as Harden comes in at 14,000. The last game of the day is the Utah Jazz and the LA Clippers. The Clippers are 2-point favorites. I don't really know why they are. And the total is a nice Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
Injury-wise, ravishing Rick Rubio is out. Dante Exum is out. Raul Neto is out for the Jazz, and of course, Luke Mamute is out for the Clippers. At point guard, Patrick Beverley is at 4,000. He had 33 points last game on the back of blocks and rebounds. A little bit hard to expect that to be a recurring feature, while Lou Williams, love Lou Williams at 6,100 here. I think they're going to rely upon him a lot. I also love Don Mitchell, but the salary at 9,100 is making it a little bit harder to use him, but the last 3 games where he's playing point guard, he's averaging 51, and there is some appeal there, but it's not fantastic. Gilgeous-Alexander just really being limited at the moment by Doc Rivers. Jingle and Joe is at 5,900. I think that is a strong cash play for Ingles. And then you've got Avery Bradley, who is the worst cash play you could have. Jay Crowder's at 43. There are better ways out there to spend that. 74 for Toby Harris. I really like that price. Strong for cash. The Rooster at 7,100. Also strong, that is Danilo Gallinari, while Royce O'Neal, who had 2 big games in 2 starts, shit the bed last game, just 9 points in 27 minutes. The salary has remained up at 4,500. He's an interesting tournament guy here. At center, Gobert, love him at 8,500 here. Centers have really smashed against the Clippers, and I think this is a great opportunity for Gobert, so love him there. Favors is one that I could do without, but the table, Montrezl Harrell at 72, love that as well. And both him and Gobert, I think, are strong must-roster cash and tournament guys. On FanDuel, Harris and Harrell also come in really strong. Ingles and Lou also. Gobert's at 9,900. That's probably pushing the friendship a little bit, but I don't hate it because that matchup is such a positive for Gobert and for centers against the Clippers. Let's look at some studs and values on DraftKings. I like Lillard as my start and my value play is Evan Fournier. My stud on FanDuel is Vucevic, and my value play is McCollum. On Yahoo, my stud is Gobert, and my value play is Fournier. And on DraftStars, my stud is Dame Lillard, and my value play is Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. Make sure you guys are listening to the other podcasts across the Locked On Network, and the best way to do that is tell your newly purchased smart speaker to play the podcast Locked On, and then say insert the team name there. Also, subscribe to this podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's a great way of supporting the show. And on YouTube, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment as well. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Joel Embiid.